What's up, investors? Chase here from the Note MBA podcast. On this week's episode, we talk all about wholetailing, which it means like wholesale and retail all at the same. It's a fantastic way to be exiting note deals so you can exit them quicker and more profitably, and we talk all about that. We talk a little more boots on the ground as Robbie and David spent a lot of time in Ohio this past week or two. I don't know quite what the timeline was. We also talk about my time out at the Distressed Mortgage Expo and a tremendous conversation I had with a wonderful listener named Steve. Anyway, without further ado, check out this week's episode right now.
David, you mentioned before we hit recording how important the boots on the ground is because of a deal you saw, which I'd love to hear you talk about. But once you start to cultivate those relationships, it doesn't always just have to be a note deal. It doesn't always just have to be a first lien non-performer. There's a lot of really other great avenues to exercise when you have a team in place.
Well, I'm glad you said it because, I think people have gotten the understanding that I haven't been active on the podcast because we've been working on other deals that are, not to take away from how we got started, but they're not $20,000 note deals anymore.
First, seconds, performing, non-performing? What the f***? Note buyers, when it seems like you're in this business alone, know Chase, Robert, and the rest of their tribe are at it every week. They're bringing updates from their own note businesses as they work to find, fund, and finish deals. Follow along as they share their grassroots education with you, tuition free. If you'd like to know more about what they do and to download the entire back catalog, check out notemba.com. Now, here are your hosts, Chase Thompson and Robert Woods.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Note MBA podcast, your home for note investing on iTunes. I am Chase Thompson, joined this week by Mr. Robert Woods and David Glinsky. Fellas, what is up?
Staying warm and hurricane free for this week, Orlando.
For this week, we got another one next week.
Wait,
yes.
I'm not gonna lie to you, not having cable, there's two things I miss: live sports coverage of any kind and the Weather Channel. Y'all have another hurricane coming in?
I think it's Maria this time, right?
Yeah, I think it's already Category 5.
Maria became a Category 5 last night, I think.
Yeah, so, but it's all done chronologically, right? So y'all got hit by Irma, so this is Maria. So there's been that many storms since, wow. I need to get, at least just pay to get the Weather Channel. This is outrageous. Well, I appreciate it, fellas. Everybody kind of coming together for this week's show. We've got a lot to talk about, so we can dive right in. I was just at the Distressed Mortgage Expo out in Southern California, which was a lot of fun. Got to see and interact with a ton of our listeners that I have not been able to meet before. Some I had been able to meet before. So that was really, really cool. Huge shout out to just a couple of them: Chris, Mike, Kelly, Iris, Gerald, Steve, David, Jason, everybody. If you didn't hear your name, I apologize. I just wrote a couple of names down for some really awesome and great conversations I had with y'all. It was amazing to kind of be out there and get the feedback for the show and to see where everyone is at in their business, to see how long they've been doing it. We've got a ton of listeners that already have 10, 15, 20 deals under their belt. This is incredible. A lot of times I think about who's listening to the show and whether they've gotten in the business yet, what are they doing in real estate, what's their experience in real estate, all of this kind of stuff. And so sometimes I just don't know, right? I don't know what you guys have been doing and how you've been out, accomplishing your real estate goals. And so it's always amazing to get a chance to talk with you. So I really appreciate that and every chance I get. So, and a ton of people had some questions about where Mr. Woods and Mr. Glinsky were while this event was going on, to which I had to respond, in the great state of Ohio. So what was up in Ohio, fellas?
So I don't know where I got this from. I think I got the quote from a throwback Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar that I went to, titled "He Who Controls the Paperwork Controls the Deal."
Ooh.
And man, you guys have heard me complain about this challenge. We want to use a lot of different words, but we're supposed to use the word challenge instead of the negative word when you're not seeing eye to eye. So I was back up there to go see eye to eye with a contractor I've had challenges with. And just, one of those things where it was amazing after having a conversation and getting a full understanding of why the work has been so poor and taken so long and just been a challenge the entire time. Because originally when this deal got started, apparently the contractor had wrote about a $15,000 check, which was my 50% deposit. And he had sent that to his lead foreman, superintendent, however you want to title that in their hierarchy. And that individual had a heart attack and stopped working, and supplies got misappropriated or wherever. So he has decided to announce that he's making a loss on this deal. So it wasn't important to him because he had other deals he could make money on, which is just mind blowing to be across from somebody. And it doesn't, thank goodness it doesn't affect me the same way, but I definitely understand why there's physical violence and assault in this world when people are so ignorant and take the lack of responsibility. I will own that deal turned into such a headache because it was not an important deal to me. It was a much smaller deal that I had put on a back burner, and I had other projects that were either A, losing more money, or B, making more money that took precedent. This one has just been abused so bad it finally needed to be addressed. And I had a separate meeting with my attorney. And what's hilarious about it is I come out of the meeting with my attorney, and this contractor's attorney is in an adjacent building. And his attorney was downstairs right when I walked by. And we had a good talk. I walked with him for about, maybe 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, I think so.
And, the attorney is an intelligent individual. He is, by all means. He's a little schwarmy, but he means well, and he's an intelligent guy. So he knows to not say anything too much, but without doubt, he understands that his client has implicated himself in not a good situation in this whole thing. And I'm like, just get the damn deal done. And it's one of those things is we all have these things that are just, it's so much stress. And it's just okay, do you deal with it, leave it in the back burner and let it just kind of be the rash, or do you just go take care of the rash, and once it clears up, you go back to focusing on everything else? And like I said, it's annoying because the amount of energy and effort that has gone into this deal. And I try to use this analogy, and I don't know if I was talking with you, David, or who I was talking to about it, is that this deal in Ohio that we flew up there for, this is the second time I've had to follow up in the last month with a flight and a hotel and a rental car. So let's just say I've spent about $3,000 of time and money in those two trips. This deal is a wash now. This deal will take 2 years for me to make my money back. It's so small. And I spent less time doing my last development project than I've done dealing with a $40,000 house in Cleveland. And it's just one of those things about managing your vendors, how good are your relationships. And, this one came from a referral, and part of it is two aspects. Did I vet the referral? No, I did not. I took the referral on face value. 100% my fault, right? I give my buddy a hard time every time I talk to him about it. But the fact that I engaged in business with a contractor and had these many problems are 100% my fault. I didn't manage him, I didn't manage the process, and I didn't do a good job of vetting him. At the end of the day, though, he wrote up a contract, signed the contract, and got paid for the contract and didn't fulfill the work. And one of the things that's amazing is how sloppily this individual has done the paperwork. To that quote, he who controls the paperwork controls the deal. Where there are just incredibly pathetic line item things that I could cause a fuss about if we actually had to sue him, and I don't want to. So the last thing you want to do is engage in excess litigation. I mean, I treat this situation the same way we treat a non-performing note. Just please get the hell out of the property, or please finish the property. Just move, just do something, just make a payment. I don't want to have to hire my attorney. No one wins when you have to engage an attorney. The only person that wins is the attorney, because even when they file your paperwork wrong, they're still going to charge you, and then they're going to bill you to do it a second time. So that was where we were at in the long and the short. We got to check on a couple other projects. We got a duplex up there that we're getting quotes for renovating on. I think it was a little high. We got a quote from the property management company, and even this morning I was sitting around. It's a 1-bedroom lower unit, And for the scope of work and the price they gave us, I don't think they're in alignment. David, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it wasn't even a complete rehab we were asking for, but they were a little out of their minds. It wasn't crazy far off. It's just that they're definitely higher. And for what the property is and what the neighborhood it's in, I don't think it needs the type of work that they're asking to put in there. So definitely have to call another couple contractors. Actually, I want to touch on that. I think people should start using Facebook groups more often. You know, people have like Facebook groups for like communities and cities and stuff. Those for sale groups and all that kind of stuff. I find realtors on that all the time, and they're usually pretty good realtors.
So do you mean like going to Facebook and jumping in and like literally typing into, say, like Facebook search like real estate in San Antonio or some sort of thing like that, and then instead of looking for people or pages, looking for groups that maybe are specific to that area? Is that what you're saying?
Or even if you know the city, or like I guess you said San Antonio, but even if you know like the community or like the sub-city or the town in the city, you could type in that.
Like, you mean like neighborhood specific almost, or like area like of the town? Like this is like Stone Oak, like it's like a part of the
like
city.
area wise.
Now, question: are you talking about referrals for contractors or what?
Contractors, realtors. I mean, you can find a lot through that. I'm not saying. Obviously, you got to vet those just like you'd vet anybody else. But yeah, I mean, that's another avenue to find referrals.
I have never done that. That sounds like a great idea.
I think it's a good idea, but I think you're still going to get burnt. And I mean this because this isn't the first challenge I've had with a contractor, and it probably won't be the last. But I have a really good contractor in one market, and I won't give his information to anyone. I won't. You got work there? I don't know anybody. I'm sorry. And it's not the competition thing. It's just because, one, I don't want to be known as the guy that gives the referral to the one client that doesn't pay or does something in this case with him, because the work is so exceptional and it's priced well. It's done quickly. Him and I work well together to the point it's made me focus a larger chunk of my business in this market. And I think that's just kind of using the best tools as opposed to cultivating another one. You know, I've got a good sledgehammer in that market. So why go out and go shopping for a hammer in, Southern Indiana? And the reason, so here's the other aspect of that I want to bring up and why I kind of took that transition. We've interviewed property masters on the show before, and I've used them a handful of times on different remodels all across the country, mainly the eastern half and a lot more in the southeast, because that's where they're based out of Georgia. They've done exceptional work. Never had a challenge. Now, certain markets, man, the pricing is outrageous, and that's just a function of cost of living and the low supply of labor in those markets. It's cheaper for me to put a roof on a property in Florida than it is in Ohio right now. And you would think that Ohio would have a swath of blue-collar employees out working. But the market is so busy right now, and there's so much going on, it's hard to find that labor. And against what I was doing a lot 2 years ago, with accruing the condominiums and the different single-family houses and renovating them to keep as rentals, we've been wholesaling instead of wholetailing? We've been wholetailing instead of rehabbing and retailing.
Are you finding that to be more possible because? So what you're essentially saying is you're putting back on the market to a retail audience a home that needs a little bit of love that could be rehabbed, but you're not doing that, and instead, right, you're putting it up. You could easily wholesale it to somebody, and then they could put in that work and whatever. So you're obviously taking a little track there, but you're offering it up as this handyman special type gig.
That's exactly so. And there's two big reasons that came from. The most direct is and this will be very transparent in any future joint ventures that are established, is that I'm just at a point where, man, I had an excessive amount of money advanced on joint venture deals for remodels that make me no extra money and completely, they don't benefit the bottom line yield for me putting extra cash into the deal. and it's a velocity of capital. In some of the scenarios, not all of them, in some of them, when I've taken the time and the capital to advance on a full rehab, and you're talking a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 rehab, the time honestly changed the ability to have a higher yield because we had the duration of the rehab plus a retail market and a retail closing. The wholetailing stuff has been, 5-day inspection and we'll close as soon as we can, or it's an all cash purchase.
Yeah.
And in theory, you may be leaving dollars on the table, which is okay sometimes if you're getting rid of the deal quicker.
I would imagine it's 100% better if you're able to get the deal done quicker, or you get stuck in a scenario kind of like you're describing with thousands and thousands of dollars stuck into a deal that essentially is money just sitting. I mean, it's money that you couldn't go do more deals. It's money you couldn't do on a rehab that's 100% necessary, or something. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and a lot of that got exacerbated by the challenges I've had in that market in Ohio. Sure. I had $100,000 of my own money in these deals, and the way my JVs are structured, I don't make extra money on it. It goes to help the bottom line, but I'm not paid an interest rate. There's no guaranteed rate of return. It's still a shared profit split. I just had to front extra money instead of going back to my joint venture, which has been beneficial. My JVs understand that I'm happy to write the $30,000 check when it makes sense and not make extra money because, my extra money is on the bottom line of what we get when we retail it. But from a time and velocity of capital, in the challenge with unknown contractors and vetting them is getting into that spot and doing too much work in a market that I just don't have either the relationship or the skill with the appropriate price tag attached to it to maximize the dollars we've got invested in these deals.
Sure. So this past weekend, in having conversations with listeners, just other investors, basically everyone that was there were a lot of people that shared exactly what your sentiment is, and their question to me, to us, to the show, to everybody kind of out there was, what in your opinion is the best way to go about, say, picking a market or maximizing on a market? And my advice, which I'd love to get your 2 cents on from you guys, is you've got to bet on the jockey, not the horse. And in this scenario, to me, the jockey is the market. Robbie, you just got to talking about somebody who is a lights out contractor in a particular market, right? So for me, betting on the jockey, not the horse, is essentially the horse is the deals. So if you've got a lights out contractor in a particular market, or a team, let's say, you've got a great real estate agent, you've got a great attorney relationship, you've got just a contractor that is on time, he's on price, he's just a really good contact. I get why you would continue to look for notes in that market, but if you start to get the relationships with the market, like someone like Robbie has, you can start to find other types of deals in those markets, find other horses, essentially, for this jockey to be riding, to be working, to be growing your business through. And this idea of diversification, when you've got a bunch of people saying that notes are too expensive now, or the availability's dropped off the table, or whatever the case may be, this could or couldn't be true. That's not the part of the conversation. The part of the conversation is that once you start building out these boots on the ground, David, you mentioned before we hit recording how important the boots on the ground is because of a deal you saw, which I'd love to hear you talk about. But once you start to cultivate those relationships, it doesn't always just have to be a note deal. It doesn't always just have to be a first lien non-performer. There's a lot of really other great avenues to exercise when you have a team in place like that.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because I think people have gotten the understanding that I haven't been active on the podcast because we've been working on other deals that are, not to take away from how we got started, but they're not $20,000 note deals anymore.
Right, exactly.
And you start changing the number of commas in deals or looking at, larger acquisitions. That's where that comes from, having had that team. But, I always come back to it, and we're going to finish it, by the way. This is meant to have been addressed for a while. The Science of Getting Rich chapters have been recorded for I don't know how long. And they just haven't gotten edited up, which is 100% my fault. But there's two aspects in the Science of Getting Rich that I think work here. one of them is always the illusion of growth, or the impression of growth, not illusion, the impression of growth. And taking the note business, and one of the challenges I always had with it, because it just never worked for me and my mindset of growth, being how many deals did somebody do? I don't give a shit how many deals somebody did. Congratulations, you own 1,000 units. Well, it's 1,000, $5,000 trailer homes in the middle of Wyoming. Who gives a shit? You got 1,000 deals. Or you bought 100 contract for deeds for $5,000 each. Good. I mean, that's a great $500,000 trade. That sounds like a whole hell of a lot of work. And you can consolidate that into like some other project and something a little bit larger. But the other aspect of the science of getting rich, where you're always talking about, notes for me have been the vehicle to get me to where I want to go, which is luxury condo development. And notes have gotten to me to where I've amassed a rental property enough that have I seen the downsides of being a landlord. I also get, beautiful cash flow every month. So it's not really the negative side of it. But yeah, there's always got to be that transition in the growth and using it to what you want. So yeah, the $5,000 deal is great to get started on. And then maybe it's the $100,000 deal, or it's you get in that market and you've got a great contractor and you go to sell a property. And while you're selling the property, your realtor's like, wait a second, I've got this other project that this guy does this type of rehab on this other project. We can all work together and make more money. And now the next thing you know, the exclusive note person is now doing fix and flips again, which leads to a blank lot next to one of these projects that you go buy the lot on, and you do a development deal. And at some point you get enough money, you can go buy an apartment building or an apartment complex. I mean, it's just whatever you want to make out of it, but it's always growing and transitioning. And picking the market, I think, is to what Chase is saying and reiterating, it really is about developing a team. And I can go to Ohio and develop a new team. I've got buddies that run an amazing business down in Columbus that are rehab fix and flip guys. They've got a property management. They do turnkey rentals. They're doing all sorts of stuff. They've got a great team in place, and they've spent the time and the money and the effort building that team, something that my referral was supposed to be a jump towards. It's supposed to streamline it, that's the challenge and the beauty in that Facebook group that David talked about. That Facebook group is the same as my referral that I got. So when you get that, you still have to stay on top of it. And that's the one thing I didn't do. Like, I failed miserably to stay on top of this contractor and manage him, which is why I've had to spend extra time cleaning up the mess,
It's like a wound, the more you ignore it, the later down the line, you got to take care of it every day now instead of just once a week. But to tie in your point to the original kind of thought there, where what people should do as far as either wholetailing or rehabbing or deciding how to do that, I think another factor is it really depends on where you are on your portfolio. If you need the cash quicker, or if you've got funding coming in through the pipeline. Like, if you're more comfortable, then maybe a longer rehab and spending a couple more grand would be smarter. But if you need the cash and got to get it back out again, it would just be smarter to wholetail it.
Mm-hmm. I essentially, what you guys are saying, I love this wholetailing and then rehabbing where it's appropriate and all of the things was the conversation at this event last weekend. The conversation was 100% predicated on the pivot, on the diversity, on diversifying, where it is and what's happening with your deal, and the understanding that you don't have to be stuck in the mud with whatever it is your quote strategy is. You can pivot. Imagine that, right? Like, not getting stuck in this idea that I have to rehab, or not getting stuck in this idea that I have to wholesale it, or whatever the case may be. And that was literally the message time and again in these conversations, and overarching, in my opinion, of the entire event. So I think it's fascinating that we, a year ago, started talking about, this was the end of 2016. We were talking about the direction of the show, going the way it was going to go and all that kind of stuff. I'm not like patting on the back too hard or whatever. Obviously it was all predicated on some moves that Robbie was making and what have you, but this idea that we kind of saw that and understood the importance of that and how great and pivotal notes can be to kind of like getting you set up or helping you understand or inserting yourself into a market that maybe just finding a motivated buyer or motivated seller, 7 states away. Yeah, man, that can be hard as shit, right? Like you've got people doing mailers every single week. You got people, it can be difficult to do that, but you get in there with whatever way you can, and then all of a sudden you start making those good relationships. And like Robbie said, you're at the closing table, and the agent says, hey, I might have this other project that you might want to take a swing at. And then all of a sudden, it is easier to get a foothold in that market, and it is easier to start diversifying and really growing and scaling a business you want and the business that you want to be after, which I think is freaking fan-damn-tastic. I love it. Anything else, gentlemen? I've loved this episode already.
Anything else? There's all sorts of stuff else, man. I guess a couple things. I'm trying to figure out how to make sense of this because, this is not a cash-generating podcast for Mr. Woods here, and I want to spend some time on a project I'm a little pissed about. I was just in Ohio, and when I met with my attorneys on this issue with the contractor, I met with them on another topic. And I had a foreclosure in the People's Republic of Cuyahoga County, as they refer to it. If anybody remembers my trip to North Korea, you'll understand the joke there, the People's Republic.
Oh, my God.
And there's a magistrate that is well known to work below what it would be expected of his government pay when it comes to hours and work ethic. And I had a file that sat on this magistrate's desk for 3 months before I had to follow up with the attorney again to be like, listen, we need to get this thing pushed. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're just we're talking all this nonsense about hardest hit funds in the state of Ohio when we're wanting to correct blight, and that's what they're using the money for. Yet the magistrate sitting here with foreclosure files on his desk just with his thumb up his ass. And there was in the filing, which the lawyers and attorneys and legalites can refer to, it was an all other heirs filing, and one of the sons was not named, though he never filed anything, never did anything else. There was no questions because the borrower had been deceased. And we did file with all other unknown heirs. Because the name was known to the magistrate, he booted out the entire case. Not reset it, not let us amend the complaint, basically kick the whole thing out. We have to restart it. And I have been told by numerous attorneys that I've talked to in the county that this magistrate works maybe 4 or 5 hour days and takes 2 hour lunches, doesn't finish shit. And I was like, man, I feel like I should do some investigative reporting instead of just like complaining about it. Because what in the hell? You watch the news, you see all this stuff about the banks and the blight. And at some level, you've got this guy that is an active role of not helping to do that, yet tax dollars are paying for him to do it. It's like getting tenured. I'm sure you can't really get anybody fired from that job. It's not for what they pay them, I guess. I'm sure he doesn't make $100,000 a year. So I wouldn't work that hard either, I guess, right? Yeah. I guess that makes sense.
You're like, well, I guess that answers that. But your point is well heard. So are you going to do some
So I want to, but here's the realities. I feel like as soon as I make a fuss about it, like my name or the company name goes into some little bucket, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's an asshole. He's trying to cause problems."
Some little black book.
Yeah, you just don't mess with the government. I've watched House of Cards. I've seen West Wing.
So are you? What? Oh man, that's one of my favorite shows right now. Are you wanting?
I don't know. I've been jockeying the idea, but I don't know whether you do it. You just call the news station and complain. I'm not an investigator. I'm not like the whistleblower. I'm just annoyed.
It all starts somewhere. It all starts somewhere, Mr. Woods.
Yeah, well, I don't plan on buying anything else in Cuyahoga County anytime soon either. So that was the only other reason why I was like, maybe I should do something. But then again, I shouldn't do something because it's not really going to benefit me. Anyway, these are the things I think about, guys, when I'm just hanging out in my office by myself.
Oh my gosh. I
Should I single-handedly take down the government? Yeah.
I think I would love to see that crusade happen. I think
it's not like a crusade. It's like the shit I had to do when I went up there to deal with the contractor. What in the hell? You've been paid. Please do your job.
I totally agree with that. Y'all were up in Ohio, and I was like, hey, I didn't realize where y'all were at, but I was like, hey, can you do something for me up in Dayton? Because otherwise I'm going to have to take a flight up there just to go do some stupid, I got to take a document to the county to have it properly recorded. The deed. But for whatever reason, there's something wrong with the deed, with the recording, with the filing, and they will not give the information of what is wrong with the document.
I think you need to just hire a title company and have them do it.
Yeah, so I could, essentially, but taking a page a little bit out of one Robert Woods, to do that, everyone we've talked to is going to cost us $500. Round trip ticket's going to cost me $400, and I can go look at some other assets and things we're looking at in the area. So if we didn't have any other deals in the area, there's a commercial deal up there I want to go look at. There's some other stuff going on up there. So
you're not going to go look at that crack house hotel, are you?
I'm not going to go look at a crack house hotel. First of all, Montgomery County is like the capital of opioid, whatever in the country. So it's bound to not be great.
Oh, wait, the capital of opioids or just that?
I think it's the capital of opioid overdose or addiction or something like that.
It might be addiction because I just watched some documentary on Netflix called Heroin with an E in parentheses, and it highlighted 3 women in this West Virginia county. It was like a very like selfless woman, housewife kind of woman with money, driving around helping these people that are addicted. A deputy fire chief and a judge that runs a rehab court in West Virginia, and they were talking about it's the overdose capital.
So like it could be the addiction cap. I'm not sure how they quantify these actual numbers, but yeah.
Well, when it's legal and you can prescribe it and pay for it with insurance, why not?
I feel like this wonderful real estate podcast just takes some amazing turns. And not to piggyback necessarily on that story, one thing I did mention to you, and I feel like this will be something that you'd like to know, Mr. Woods. We had one of the guys I thanked at the very top of this show for hanging out and having a conversation with me at the expo was Steve Hodgden, and he pulled me aside. A couple of times I'd seen him shaking his hands. I'd been talking with somebody else, and he said, hey, I'd love to get 10 minutes of your time. Hey, I'd love to get 10 minutes of your time. Hey, I'd love to get 10 minutes of your time. And finally, it was the last day that I was going to be out there, and I was going to be leaving in about an hour or so. And I tracked him down. I wanted to be true to that agreement, that conversation, right? And he pulled me aside, and he said, he gave us compliments on our show that we did with the psychiatrist. On the show that we did that no other real estate show is going to do. Talking about, that was a fun one, right, David? I mean, talking about the anxiety and the stress and the fear and the, just all of the things, potential depression. I mean, just anything, right? That can just come from life, or talking with borrowers time and again that are having these issues, or dealing with magistrates that don't want to, go to work and get things done. And he gave me a great story of his life. That's not, my story to tell, but he just said, here's a couple of things that you need to do. And the number one resource he gave me to start attacking this part of life, this idea of gratitude and all this kind of stuff, and really being prepared for when these times hit, was a book called Hardwiring Happiness. And he, like I said, he just gave us, he gave me a tremendous just conversation one-on-one about some other stuff. But as far as, show-wide and really appreciating us talking about and tackling stuff that doesn't always have to do with ROIs, that doesn't always have to do with bankruptcy and foreclosure. And these are things other people just don't talk about, that they don't give a shit about. And so Hardwiring Happiness was a book he recommended. The second, as we are prone to do, Mr. Woods, he mentioned it and he walked away. I had already had it ordered on Amazon, and Prime should be delivering it today. But That was a really great
I
reference.
literally was just typing it in so I could order it.
Same. I just ordered it on Audible.
But it was, it was a great bit to just, give us a bit of kudos. But, like I said, it's not my story to tell of his life. But it was, he just was, you guys are all 30s, 20s. Y'all can really do some amazing stuff. And anybody listening, right, to the sound of our voice can do that, right? But he was just saying that this book really set him on a course that he's just like, I'm indestructible now. You can't get at me because I'm where I need to be. And in fact, I will give you this bit of an anecdote from our conversation. He said one of my main issues, me, Chase Thompson here, is that I do not take time to relish in the gratitude of a situation. And he knows this from, I guess, obviously his life of having been turned around. And he said, what you need to do is take these moments when they come up and really, take them inside and become, build up that muscle, right, that gratitude can be. And sure enough, 30 seconds later into this conversation, somebody walks up and they just want to shake my hand. That I love the show. I love what you do. You're impacting my business in a major way. Love you like a brother. Really appreciate it. I know you're in this conversation and you're probably on your way out. This kind of conversation, right? And he said, I just wanted to stop in and say thanks. So Steve and I are in the middle of this conversation. I get this wonderful, piece of feedback. This is amazing opportunity that I have to be grateful for all the things, right, that we're able to do. And sure enough, man, I look right back at Steve and I'm like, so you're talking about this book, Hardwire. I took no beats. I took no pauses. No, not even a second. And he said, that's what I'm talking about, man. He's like, do you know that guy? And I said, oh, yeah, I actually know him. He's so-and-so. And are you connected with him on any social platforms? I said, oh, yeah. Why do you like that guy so much? And I was like, oh, well, he's a great grandfather. And, that's one of the things that I just love watching him do. Like, I'm really grateful to see this opportunity of someone mirroring in my life things. And he's like, and I just went on and on and on. He said, you could have taken a beat, man, to just take that in. You're atrophying over here on your gratitude muscle, man, because you're even in the moment you can't do it. In a conversation I'm having with you about it. It was a tremendous conversation, and so that's what he meant when he said, you can't get at me. I'm indestructible, as it were, regarding these moments and these times when he's like a guy who's living the 90% of, 10% of what's happening is what's happening to you, right? 90% is your reaction to it, right? Essentially, he's the guy who's really weathering those storms in just the best possible way you can because he's built up that muscle. So anyway, that book, that conversation, and those are the things that I love about being able to go to these events. Worth the price of admission for me being there, to be able to have that conversation and realize that he was 100% right.
Oh, yeah, man. It's funny that you said that because I've had for the last week, been working on my email. God, Chase, you were so right a long time ago about how bad I am about responding to a lot of people on email. It's not meant to be personal. I just don't really like working or email. But I have this old article. You know who Steve Pavlina is?
Steve Pavlina. Nope.
He's got all sorts of stuff. Anyway, he's just an online marketing guy. But there's an article from like 2012. It just says happiness first, then everything else. And it's just an interesting one to it's a good daily read. So it's just interesting that you were talking about that. We do occasionally lose track of having some gratitude. The other day I was just like, I got to finish this and do this and do this. And then I realized I've been running around my house in the middle of summer, and the other day I got hot, so I put the air crazy low. And I'm just like, you know what? I like this. I'm just going to leave the air low. And there are people. We were just in a damn rental property. Actually, it's an REO technically because the guy's not paying rent. This one that Dave was talking about have to remodel. We go upstairs. This dude don't even have a bed. I don't think the water was running, was it?
No. I mean, I can't even imagine the bathroom working. He had the little stove he had a pot and a bag of his stuff, all his stuff.
Yeah. And man, we forget so often. So I'm glad that Steve told you that. It's
Humble sauce.
it's a good reminder. Well, it's a humble sauce and some gratitude at the same time.
Yeah.
And kind of a good reflection. In my absence, I've had a lot of time to reflect and pick up, alone time to think about what I've been doing and why. And, the oscillation that we all have between material success and internal happiness and our family and our relationships, our physical health. And, it's always a challenge. There's no school of life, but actually there is. The guy, Alain de Botton, he's a philosopher. I think he's European of some sort. Anyway, there's not a school for this stuff. You went through what? You 18 years of, well, not really. We'll say 12 years of education from 6 to 18. And they don't teach you this stuff about life. You don't sit in a history class and they talk to you about having gratitude. You're not in an economics class and they're talking to you about work-life balance. It's guns and butter. So it's always interesting. We get caught up on this stuff. It's important. It's how you pay your bills. But once the bills get paid, once the bills are paid, you really got to start pressing some gratitude. But shit. Anyway, I'm going to have to spend my afternoon thinking again today.
I love it. I love that you said that there's a bunch of other stuff that we could get to. This has already been, in my opinion, an exceptional show. So I will.
How are we on length? They're always asking for more.
They are always asking. I think I don't want to say we're closing in on an hour. It's hard to say. We had a long pre-discussion, and of course I hit record at the start just to make sure we don't lose anything. But either way, I think this has been a tremendous show, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to recommence, I'm sure. And a lot will have happened between now and then, so I'll close it out here. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to this week's show. If this is your first time here, be sure to head over to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, and, of course, subscribe. It helps us out tremendously. Everything we've talked about will be in the show notes over at NoteMBA.com. Be on the lookout for the rest of the episodes of The Science of Getting Rich. That's a series that we've been enjoying very much, and we've got kind of a special crescendo to that, which I'm very excited about. And as always, be sure to tell 5 other people this week about the Note MBA podcast. Catch you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Talk to you next time.